7 o'clock on the dot. Not in my drop top, cruising the streets. What up, folks? It's the pastor. Top of the evening, one and all. I hope everybody's had a great day today, 7 o'clock p.m. Monday following a very hectic period of time here in North Charleston. Period of time as I watched World News Tonight just now. I just saw North Charleston on World News Tonight once again. And not because of our accomplishments, unfortunately. So I'm hoping that we can get some folks on tonight. Let me see if my tag button is working. I got a song I'm gonna put on just to have a little background while I'm trying to get this thing tagged up or else share it out to my pages. Please share this out. Me talking about the events that happened on the Macon on Saturday, July 4th. Y'all know what it's all about. But I'm gonna put this tune on by Curtis Mayfield from way back in the day. It's a tune called Move On Up. And I hope eventually, somewhere along, we'll get the message that it's really time for us to move on up. We can't keep going backward and move forward at the same time. It just don't work that way. It just don't. We can't move forward while we're going backward. We gotta move on up, folks. Welcome to Facebook Live with the Pastor. Let me see if I can get some folks tagged up right quick. Y'all please share this out. Let me see. Move on up. Okay, I see my tag button is not working properly on my phone. So let me see if I can get it shared. Move on up. It's about time for us to move on up. You folks might understand this by and by. I'm going to get into this sauce in a couple of minutes, y'all. Let me get this thing shared out. And you all please share it out also. As they say in some things, some places, the views expressed on tonight's program are solely those of the pastor. One thing about me, though, I'm going to be honest about what I got to say, and I'm going to cover it as thoroughly as possible. Y'all please share this out and invite some more people in. Let's try to get some folks on. I got a few things I want to say. I did a live earlier today that sort of scratched the surface on what I want to talk about what happened on Saturday. And tonight's going to be a little bit more in-depth, especially the part where I talked a little bit earlier. This was preventable. And the reason why it possibly wasn't prevented has to do with some things that started to be put in place several years ago. When are we gonna learn? When are we gonna learn? I'm gonna say it. When is people like law enforcement, especially like our new chief of police, knew after a year and 9 months or something like that?
If you sit down,
when is he gonna learn that, the answers that we have do not lie within the police departments. If the police departments had the answers, we would have had crime solved in our communities a long time ago. But instead, for 20 years, I'm just going to go in this century, from the year 2000 until 2022, 2021, the police departments and law enforcement have been following that old model that was not working. And apparently now we have a chief of police here in North Charleston. I'm going to try to give him some grace, even though he's been here almost 2 years, who it seems like he thinks that that old method, somehow that never worked, will now, because he's the chief of police, is going to work. Folks, it's not. So that's going to be part of my conversation tonight. See if I can get some of these other groups tagged up here right quick. Let's see. Coalition. Really looking for certain groups. Tag button not working very well. Even my share button not working very well. Waylon Hopkins. So I'm gonna let it go just at that. So again, would you all please share this on out? So maybe we can get some more people on. That'll be great. I don't expect to be a very long time tonight, but whatever it takes to get this message out. It was crazy. Again, just like I said, I saw just a few minutes ago, North Charleston on World News Tonight. Yeah, we made the big time again, y'all. World News Tonight. The Macon. Folks, let me just say, that ain't cute. It ain't cute. And let me just say this also, we better than that. We better than what we saw in that video, okay? Well, the heck with the video. We better than what we saw on the ground, on the Macon, on Calvert Street, on Saturday. But then again, it's not unusual either. What happened here on Saturday night happened in several other major metropolitan areas around the nation, including Raleigh, North Carolina, where I think they said like they had about 9 arrests, people injured, stuff like that. Yeah. South Florida had an officer injured. So let's just get it understood that there's a national problem. Okay, there's a national problem, and it has to do with younger people who are acting without any kind of restraint, any kind of respect for authority or adults. And it's like a mob mentality, okay, straight up. Now, I want to make 2 things perfectly clear as I start this live, okay? Perfectly clear. The first thing I want to make clear is that the perpetrators that were on that video, that in that altercation with that law enforcement officer, and the way that their behavior, nah. That's why I call them perpetrators. I'm not going to call them children. I keep watching folks on social media talking about those kids and those children. This is the pastor. Again, the views expressed on this broadcast are strictly my views, okay? But from my standpoint, okay, when it comes to children do a couple of things. Children obey adults and they have a respect for authority. That's what children do. And when children step outside of that parameter, in my eyesight, in my humble opinion, they're no longer children. You want to act like an adult, then you get handled like an adult. And we were just very fortunate that in that situation on Saturday, that none of those perpetrators who assaulted a police officer now, in uniform and on duty who assaulted a police officer. We were very fortunate that none of them got carried out. No toe tags and body bags. Very fortunate. Okay. They were wrong. Totally wrong, in my humble opinion. And now, whatever, I know that there's been charges assessed against them. I'm going to talk about them a little later. But whatever the charges are, I'm not getting ready to give them no slack personally because somebody else want to call them kids or children or whatever. You know, for those that are saying, okay, let's ante up and get them out of jail or whatever, I applaud that. Well, power to you. As long as you know that you got a plan for them when they get out. Because if you just go get them out of jail and then just have no plan and hold them to that plan, oh, that's just set up in the mind. Okay, we can do this and get away with it. The community gonna come rescue us whenever we need it. And that's not gonna help our community, and that's not gonna stop this from happening again. And then the next time when it happens, God only knows, maybe there will be a body on the ground, okay? So I'm just thinking logically about this whole thing. I wish them no ill will. My wish for them was that before they assaulted that police officer on, even if it wasn't on them, on Saturday evening, before they did that, I wish that they would have thought about the consequences of their actions before doing that. In essence, their lives could be really ruined. Lives might have been not have been good before. It might have not have been good before Saturday. I don't know. But in the aftermath of this, depending on how they personally can recover from this, that will dictate where they go as far as their future. But it could be ruined, seriously, because of a bad decision, a very bad decision. So no, I do not condone the actions of the perpetrators who assaulted that law enforcement officer on Saturday whatsoever. It was too easy for them to walk away. And the second part is I'm going to commend law enforcement that in that altercation, they had enough restraint that they did not do actually what legally that they could have done. They could have actually fired. They could have, in feeling threatened for their lives, they could have actually shot and killed one of those who assaulted that officer. Honestly, that's just the cold, hard truth. And literally got away with it, especially based on the video evidence of others that were standing there filming it, and they put it on social media. Officers could have shot and killed any one of them, especially that one that was on the ground. If she would have pulled her weapon and fired, killed one of them kids. But fortunately, I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's in North Charleston training. At least I would like to think that's what it was, the North Charleston training or whatever, since Walter Scott, since the intervention of the Scott family in the training program with Anthony and Rodney, both assisting with new recruits with law enforcement and their training. I hope that that's what we saw in the way that law enforcement handled themselves in that aspect of it. The fact that even though it was a situation where previously, years ago, the minds of law enforcement might have gone to that point where I need to pull my weapon and shoot. They did not go there, and that's commendable. I respect that and I honor that. But there's another part to that I'm going to talk about in a minute. I watched the Chief Ron Camacho, who's been the chief now for about, a year and 9 months or something like that, year and 8 months, in North Charleston. I watched his press conference, his press release, okay? And there's some things that kind of jumped out at me as I listened to the way he described what went on that night, okay? He talked about quite a bit about gunfire. As a matter of fact, he opened the press conference talking about gunfire. And it seems like every few words he said gunfire. It was like he was making a point about gunfire. And then he tried to compare it, gunfire versus fireworks. You know. But what was amazing about the video that I saw both the short video and the longer video. In the longer video, you don't hear any pop, pop, pop until after the taser is deployed. That was the first pop that I heard after the taser was deployed. And then later there were some more pops that could have actually been either gunshots or fireworks. And I know he said as law enforcement officers, they can tell the difference between gunfire and fireworks. Well, if that's the case, then that $2.5 million surveillance system with ShotSpotter that we have, if police can do that, then we don't really need that. But I've never been able to figure out who, in Chicago for a long time, for our holidays, for 4th of July or New Year's Day or whatever, they didn't shoot firecrackers in Chicago, where I grew up at. It was all gunfire. And every now and then somebody might have some fireworks, some firecrackers, and they might light them, but you couldn't tell the difference between no gunfire and no fireworks. So I don't know what kind of law enforcement officer he is, but he says he could tell the difference. All right, maybe so. I don't know. Okay. When asked about it by the media, how many gunshots were fired, all he could say was multiple. But the thing is, again, on the video, there's a short video, a very short video of like a minute or so like that. Then there's a longer video of close to 4 minutes. On both of those videos, there's actually no sound of gunfire or fireworks, okay, whichever it might be, until at the last closing seconds of either video. As the altercation was taking place on the ground, after that, okay? So this highlighting the fact that gunshots. We know the difference between gunshots and fireworks. Seems like the chief was trying to trigger something in people's minds and create a worse scenario than it actually was. And to make it so obvious though, is if you watch the video, I need that StreamYard thing where you can actually run videos and stuff. But if you watch the video though, you'll see the officers by their car earlier on in the video kind of laughing and talking, joking as things were going on. Now, if this was a situation where there was gunfire, the potential for guns to be present or something like that, then they'd be standing around like this, keying and carrying on. No. Something just ain't right. It just ain't right. But during the response, okay, multiple firearms were located. Okay, multiple firearms were located. And also a makeshift spear was located. Okay, all right. And several people were arrested. I believe it was 4 juveniles were arrested and 2 adults were arrested. The juvenile charges were, for all 4, assault by mob, 3rd degree, assault on police while resisting arrest, breach of peace, resisting arrest. That's like a double charge, isn't it? I don't know. And then possession of a machine gun. Okay, now I don't know who had the machine gun, but it was said that 4 firearms were recovered. The chief said 4 firearms were recovered. When asked at the press conference, he didn't mention anybody arrested for possession of a firearm. But if 4 firearms were present, either one person had all 4 of them, 2 people had 2 each, 3 people, one had one had another one, and the other, however that would work out. Or there were 4 people with 4 different firearms. But when he answered the question the law enforcement gave him at the press conference yesterday, he only mentioned those that were arrested for assaulting the police officer. He didn't even mention anybody arrested for possession of a firearm. It's kind of unusual. And those firearms, I wonder how many were actually fired if they did receive those, if they did have those. I wonder how many of those were actually fired there. I wonder if they're going to tell us that. Maybe not. Maybe so. I hope they will. Okay. But I talked about, in my humble opinion, the contribution, the wrong that was done by the perpetrators, okay, in assaulting that officer. I talked also about how I'm commending law enforcement for their restraint because nobody got shot. I want to be specific because they did not pull out their guns and shoot anybody. But there's an area where I have to ask the question, and I'm not the only one that asked the question. I saw some other community, quote unquote, leaders today who seemed to have the same question. They just didn't ask it the same way that I asked it. They were like, really, we were kind of wondering, well, what happened that led up to that? What was before that? And my question was, I would love to see the body cam footage on the female officer that laid hands on this girl in order to determine how it got to that point. I want to see that video, okay? Again, I've talked about the perpetrators being in the wrong. I've commended law enforcement for not shooting anybody, which they actually had the right to do. But now I just want to know, and I really do need to know. I'm going to tell you that, I'm going to be honest. I need to see this video from the body cam that woman had, that she was wearing, that'll show specifically, because the video that was some cell phone videos out there, it doesn't really show up close how she transitioned from being an officer on the scene to putting her hands on this person. It doesn't show that. But the body cam footage would actually do so. And I'm trying to figure out, did she contribute in any kind of way to what happened? I really want to know. That's all. I'm not accusing her of anything. I just want to know. Did she misjudge her situation? Did she look around and say, well, I've got this under control and, this is what I'm going to do? Maybe she did misjudge the situation. Did she overthink her ability to control that crowd there? I don't know. I did see in the video that she literally walked away from the rest of the police, it seems, going after this girl. That's what it looked like to me. I don't know. Maybe I missed something. But something in her mind led her to think that that was a good idea, I guess, okay? Did she expect something where she should have been more cautious? When the chief was asked how many people was out there, he said it was about 400. And she decided it was a good idea for her to just leave the rest of the law enforcement officers was there and to go after this one individual? I don't know. Might not have been a wise move. Or was she just reckless? I don't know. It's too much I don't know in all of this for that one thing called a body cam and the body camera footage to be what's holding any of us back from knowing what actually happened right then. Okay. But when the chief of police was asked specifically about her body camera footage, would it be, and I quote, publicly available? A reporter asked, will it be publicly available? The chief of police responded, no, probably not. The video that could actually clear up the questions that we have about how this whole thing got to the point before they got on the ground, how it got to the point that I just saw on World News Tonight. And it seems like that would be what he would want for us to see and what everybody would want to see, how it got to that point. What happened from her getting out of her vehicle to interacting with other law enforcement officers that were there, to breaking away from where they were at, to what looks like actually following this person and then putting hands. The only way to really know that for sure would be to be able to see the body cam footage from her camera. That's the only way that we'll be able to know that. And that's what I want to see. And the chief saying, probably not. Folks, that's a problem. That's a problem. And again, it seems like every community leader that who I saw interviews with, and I've seen most of the interviews on the TV, most of them were in one way or another asking the same question. What happened before then? How did it get to that point? And the only way we can answer that question or get that question answered is through the body camera footage. And the closer that footage is shown to the general public, the more trust the general public will have in the fact that it might not have been altered in order to protect law enforcement. Because right now, the question keeps getting asked. I was asked it today about community trust with the law enforcement. We had started on the right road some time ago, but I think that we've kind of backtracked on that trust area. I think it's falling off more and more, really. And this answer that the chief of police gave about no, you're probably not going to see the video footage, it definitely is not anything helping the community to trust what law enforcement is doing. Let's build some trust. Let's release the video footage, unless you got something to hide. And if you got something to hide, put it out anyway, and that way address it. Confront the wrongdoing if there's wrongdoing shown on the camera so we can make the change together. Law enforcement and community. We see, we acknowledge a problem. Now let's make the change. Okay? And all it takes is release of the body camera footage. And again, the sooner that happens in proximity to the event was Saturday, somebody in this community should have been allowed to see the body camera footage yesterday. And let me just make this clear. There is no South Carolina law that says that body camera footage cannot be released, okay? Even in the event of officer-involved shootings, where SLED is asked to take over the investigation, where law enforcement agencies have used that excuse, well, SLED has it, so we can't release the video. That's not South Carolina law. That's something that law enforcement invented in order to protect law enforcement from the community actually seeing what really happened in situations. That's not according to South Carolina's code of law. So us asking to see this video, the body cam video, it's not against the law. It can only help to build trust with the community to see it. And if there's a problem, it'll aid us in being able to, one, identify the problem and then start working on how do we fix the problem. It's real simple, common sense. But for some reason or other, this Chief Ron Camacho, don't want to do that. They had a meeting today, I believe. I think that maybe Ronald Smith Stunner might have been invited in to the meeting. I think the young lady who did the organizing, although she followed all of the protocols necessary in order to do that, and there's no way that she could have figured that this was going to happen, And again, I'm still trying to figure out if maybe there might have been some complicity in the problem. Possibly, maybe not, but they had a meeting with her today, and conspicuously, I don't get invited to these meetings anymore. Apparently, I don't talk the way that they expect me to talk. I don't give a damn. I'm gonna say what I need to say, straight up, because I represent the community. My voice, when I speak for the people of this community. Okay, and I'll do it within law enforcement circles. Judicial circles, political circles, I don't care, because it's all about the people. It's all about the people. But the chief said something that was in that video, something else that was kind of disturbing though. He said that moving forward, he was going to be sitting down with our local law enforcement agencies, right? With the city of Charleston and city of, Munce Corner, the Charleston County Sheriff's Department, and SLED, and all these other individuals to make a strategy, to come up with a strategy in order to address these issues or whatever. And I'm sitting there scratching my head, trying to figure out what's wrong with him. What he's talking about doing is the same strategy that's been in place, that was in place for the first 20 plus years of the 21st century. Law enforcement figuring out how to fix the problem of crime by themselves. The police, who got all of the answers, figuring out what to do to address the crime. Okay, folks, It's never worked, and it's never gonna work, because the police don't know the community like the community knows the community. It takes the hood to save the hood. And that's why we have people in place, people who have been about that life in the community, but are now working in order to save the same communities at one time they were predators in and tore down, who are working to benefit the communities. One being Ronald Smith, another being Donamichi Singleton, another Keith Smalls. These are people who've been about that life, and now they're working to build up the community now. But to say that the chief of police says, we're going to sit down with our law enforcement people and figure this out so we can make it better, without calling in the people who know the community intimately, without calling those people in, it's a setup for failure. It has never worked. That's why we're in the predicament we're in right now. In North Charleston, under John Zumwalt, it did not work. Under Chief Driggers, it did not work. The shift started coming when Reggie Burgess became chief of police, and it's shifted even further now since he's become mayor. But them other folks, they did exactly what this chief is talking about doing now. Oh, we got all the answers, so we'll figure it out. How's that worked so far? It hasn't. It hasn't. So the law enforcement, if they really want to fix this problem, the first thing that they should have did, right along with releasing the body cam footage, was bringing in the folks in the community who we know are those that will interrupt violence, what they call violence interrupters. Some of whom that I just mentioned have been trained along with myself as violence interrupters. Okay. The chief want to go to law and order methods. 5-0 know it all. And they ain't been able to fix nothing. But see, in North Charleston a few years ago, as again, first off under Chief Reggie Burgess, and then the transition into Mayor Reggie Burgess, North Charleston started moving in the right direction, and it's noted in the reduction in violent crime in North Charleston. What happened was, after all of those years of law and order policing, Chief Burgess at the time, he did the research nationally and saw how community violence intervention was what was changing lives and saving communities across the United States. And he started promoting that, bringing people in. Unfortunately, after the death of 14-year-old Rajanae Smith 5 years ago, her father and her mother, they started Positive Vibes Rajanae Smith, and through them and other nonprofits, with Donamichi Singleton, the North Charleston Youth Resistance, North Charleston, South Carolina Youth Resistance Incorporated, Guns Down Chucktown, and with Keith Smalls, which Keith is a relatively newer group, other than those other two. Well, about the same. My Community's Mentors Keepers group. It started embracing, North Charleston started embracing this concept that the way to save the hood is through the people in the hood. It's sort of like with your big stores, They have shoplifting problems, right? And it used to be that they would hire police officers, or even active duty police officers to run security in their stores. But guess what those stores figured out when it really wasn't working? They stopped hiring security or law enforcement officers to work security in their stores. And who'd they start hiring? They started hiring ex-offenders who were formerly shoplifters and thieves, who knew how to spot those that was doing crime, how to intervene, and how to make their stores safer. It's the same with Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous. Your counselors are who? Former alcoholics and former drug addicts. Doing what it takes from their personal experience to make the change. So using these community representatives who have been part of the criminal problem in the community, who are now volunteering their efforts mostly to make the change in their own communities, to utilize them to the fullest, bringing them to the table, giving them a voice, listening to what they have to say, not acting like I'm all this because I'm the police and you don't really know nothing, even though those that come from the community are the ones who have lived this life. This has been their lived experiences. Law enforcement officers, they get trained about what to do in the community. And it's a difference when you're trained about what's going on in a community than when you live in a community and you've been born and raised in a community. Stunner straight off the Macon. That's home. That's home for him. Who better to know what's going on the Macon? Beachy, straight off Otranto, you know? So it's insane, but North Charleston a few years ago started moving in the right direction, and that's how we saw the reduction in crime. And really, if the procedures that would have been put in place effectively those years ago, when the nonprofits received money from North Charleston in order to reduce crime, if that procedure would have been put in place properly, monitored correctly, and gotten the outcome that it was supposed to, we probably would not have seen what happened on Saturday on the Macon. I'm just going to say it straight up. And here's why, especially when I'm talking about interrupters to violence, violence interrupters, okay? Violence interventionists, of which I've named 3 of the organizations. There were 13 organizations that got $100,000 each from the city of North Charleston in order to reduce crime and violence. Okay. Now, first off, whoever put that whole model together, they kind of screwed up, because you can't take advocacy groups and those who do certain projects and equate them with the same, hold them in the same light as somebody that gets a call at 2 o'clock in the morning and is going to a hot spot where there's been a murder at. Those are 2 different categories, and they deserve a different recognition when it comes to allotment of funds, okay? But the city of North Charleston gave everybody the same thing. Big flaw. I'm not going to talk about the problems that 2 of the organizations that were funded had. Okay, that's been in the news. We know about it. But the reality is the other 11 nonprofits were blamed for what went on with those 2. The other 11 nonprofits, there was no investigation into them. They were all right, or whatever investigation was done. It didn't bring any charges back. They were good. But still in all, even to this day, 2 years later, those nonprofits have not been funded again, okay? Even though they should be funded at different levels, straight up. Real violence interrupters, positive vibes, Guns Down Chucktown, my community mentors keeper. Those are the organizations that are really putting in the work out here in the streets, offering mentoring for our young adults out here, young men out here, mentoring programs, who, when there is a shooting in the community, they go out into the community and they try to mitigate any retaliation and things like, that's dangerous. And they do this since that first initial allotment of money. They were doing it before, but since that, they've not gotten anything else to do this, and they do this. It's volunteer. Ronald Smith, he has a whole building that he pays rent on every month. And he's not independently wealthy. Thank God for a couple of people that believe in it, because the city show ain't giving him nothing at all. Now, this ain't a commercial for funding or nothing like that, but let me just say something as I get ready to close, okay? Talking about July 4th and what happened in that crowd. Before when the funding was being processed and everything, the city of North Charleston sent myself and a few more people, including Ronald and Donna Michi, to Chicago to study violence intervention, community-based violence intervention in the city of Chicago with a nationally known violence interventionist by the name of T.O. Hardeman. And we visited different organizations there, and we saw how there were those who were actually in the streets intervening in violence and those who are actually providing programs and different educational things and all of that and how they were working. And we were supposed to actually come back to North Charleston and try to implement those things. Unfortunately, it was interrupted. Let me just put it that way. I'm trying to be nice about how I say that. It was interrupted and it never really got off the ground. But one of the things that made their program successful in Chicago, especially about violence interrupters, okay, those who would, again, hear about trouble going on and they would do what it took in being OGs in the community. They would go into these places, to people's homes, talking with these street folks, these young ones, gun-toting young ones or whatever, and just asking them, hey, stand down, interrupting violence before violence actually took place. But you know what? They created a literal job opportunity for violence interrupters in Chicago, starting salaries right around $20,000 a year, giving them some incentive to be a part of that change that they really wanted to make in their community. And if we would have been able to replicate that program here, to be able to hire OGs who want to make that change in the community, not just asking them to just volunteer to do this, even though many of them, that's what they do anyway, because it's in their heart to clean up what they done messed up. But to offer them that incentive by giving them a paycheck in order to do so, that's how we could have really built a ground force. And what do I mean by a ground force? I mean at a block party like what went on Saturday, not anticipating anything going wrong, but to make sure that eyes were there on the ground, people who the community trusts and believe in and knows that they are community-based violence interventionists, many of whom who used to terrorize them neighborhoods and now have turned their lives around, to have seen them there, to have had 10 or 15 violence interventionists there in that crowd there. It was a strong possibility that them kids might have, I said it. Them perpetrators or all of those that went off there might not have done what they did, because the OGs in the community would have been right there in the community, identified as violence interventionists who wear certain attire. In New York, I forget what them boys used to be called. The Hispanic group, I forget. Oh, the Angels, Guardian Angels. Yeah. They used to police the subways there. And where it was subways where people were terrorized or taking the trains, all of a sudden, when Guardian Angels showed up in them cars, the people were at ease. They knew they were safe. We could have had 2 years already under our belts of community-based violence interventionists in the community at these events, standing firm, with the young ones being able to see this and understanding, man, these guys, we heard about them. They've been to prison and all of that, but look, they're making a change. They're here to protect our space for us. But instead of following up on that, here we are, over 3 years, detached from when the original funds was allotted, with chaos brewing in our communities. The crime rate is not going the way it was supposed to go. It's going back the other way again. And now we got the chief of police talking about, well, we're not going to release the video. They don't need to see the video. And I'm going to meet with all of the other law enforcement agencies, and we're going to figure this thing out. Well, great golly gee wow. I don't think it's going to work, Chief. I would hope that it would. But the thing is, you need the people, the boots on the ground people. And when I say boots on the ground people, I'm not talking about those who have like a mediocre input in the community. I'm talking about people who you can call at 3 o'clock in the morning when there's crime, when there's a body on the ground, and they're going to show up. Not somebody that you got to wait until office hours to get to, or somebody that's got this other program dealing with learning or something like that. No, I'm talking about violence interrupters, people in the community whose hearts are to change their community. They know the problems because they were the problems. And now, because they've been funded And they don't have to be asked to do this voluntarily. They can get some money to feed their families with. Now we got a group of people who are ready to be at these events, to show up at these events, to talk to the community members at the events, young ones, old ones, intermediate, talking to them. Don't start any mess out here. Come on, we got kids out here. We got older folks out here. Don't start that. As a matter of fact, why don't you get with us so we can maybe get you into a training program and get you a good paying job with some benefits or whatever. Is that what you want? You want a way out of this life? We'll fix that up. Because that's what Ronald Smith and Positive Vibes, that's what they're doing that. They're doing that, okay? They're offering programs now, working on programs now in order to train parents to actually be parents. That's a big question in this whole thing. Where the parents at? Where the parents at? Where the parents at? If you know the hood like I know the hood, you don't have to ask that question. There's a lot of good parents out here. But unfortunately, though, we come up in communities where parents are overwhelmed, especially single parents, women, who are trying to just keep a roof over their head and food on the table for their kids, who unfortunately might have to work 2 and 3 jobs because the minimum wage, it ain't enough to keep a roof over the head. Then you expect them to do all these other things and carry on. And there's no excuse, I mean, as far as parenting. We got too many parents who feel like their children need to be their friends instead of their child, and they don't parent according to that parenting set. We got too many of them. We got too many young parents, and I'm off on a tangent right now. We got too many young parents who never had parents who were a role model for them. So they never learned how to be a parent. So they had babies having babies, and they never even learned how to be a parent. So we got work to do, folks. We got work to do. But the one thing we can't do is have the work to do and then also have law enforcement that looks like it's working against us. And thinking, I'm just going to put a caveat, and thinking that what they're doing is right. Where Ron Camacho came from, maybe that's the way it worked. Rural Pennsylvania. He was in a small town, okay? North Charleston ain't the big city, but it's big enough. It ain't rural. And them law and order methods might work out there. But the urban area of North Charleston requires urban tactics and strategies in order to overcome the situations that we face in urban communities. The crime, the violence, the poor education system, the poverty, people hungry, homeless. We can't do the same things that were done in the past that contributed to those problems and think it's going to change. No, we need innovative thought processes. And Chief, if you ever get a chance to watch this live or whatever, I'm just asking you, please, change. That's all you got to do. Give up that old thought process. Open up your ears, okay? Open up, do a data dump from what you learned, from where you came from. And understand that this community that you're in right now, that you're the chief of police over, it ain't like where you was at before. And my job, my black job, is to make sure that our community is taken care of. I take that position as pastor seriously. It means shepherd. And it's going to take everybody, including the chief of police, including the mayor, including our city council, including our elected officials that preside over in our House of Representatives over North Charleston and our Senate. It's going to take all of us to make sure that North Charleston continues to move in the right direction. Because right now, you've got people who have volunteered for years out in the streets, not gotten paid for anything. They got bills just like us, like everybody else, just like you do. You do your job, you get paid for it. But you want them to get out in a hostile environment and work for free. Fund them. Fund them. To Chief Ron Camacho, I'm telling you, fund them. To our beloved Mayor Reggie Burgess, fund them. To our beloved City Council, fund them. And when I say them, I'm talking about those who do that hardest, most dangerous work. Fund them. And give something to those other ones too. Doesn't have to be the equivalent. If I had $1 million to give, I would give, let's see, I would divide it up. Let's see. Violence interrupters. Each one of those three groups that I talked about, each one of them would get 25 or $250,000. Each one of them. That's $750,000. That other $250,000 I would divide amongst as many, maybe $20,000 to $50,000. Well, about $20,000 to $30,000 in each one of those other satellite organizations, and then monitor that money the way it's supposed to be monitored, but not with a microscope, like they tried to do in 2022, 2023, when he put that money out. That wasn't right either. That's a whole nother conversation. So that's, if we continue on this retroactive activity, you see, there was no conversation about this on Friday. Last Friday, there was no conversation about this. For the weeks before that, no conversation about this. Then all of a sudden, Saturday, boom, everything exploded. Now it's the conversation. That's what's called retroactive. And until we get proactive in our approach, talking about these things and getting solutions on the table and working toward fixing these problems ahead of time before there's a problem, until we get that deep in our hearts, we're going to keep on losing. And I guarantee the next time it's going to be toe tags and body bags. Straight up. We got a blessing this time. Again, shout out to North Charleston PD for that restraint. But I still want to see the body cam. Not only me, the community wants to see the body cam. Come with it. If it ain't nothing to hide, it ain't nothing to hide. Just set it out. And the sooner the better. To those who were the perpetrators of that, something in your heart should have said, don't do that. But now that it's done, whatever the consequences are, man up. Charge it to the game. I know when I got busted, right? When I went up that road, that's the way I took it. That's why I took my sentence. I manned up. Straight up. I did the crime. They gave me the time. I did the time. It's too late to cry after the fact. Man up. Man up. And to everybody else, folks, maintaining our community and the safety within our community is not relegated to me and me alone, to Ronald Smith or Donna Michi, or to the law enforcement, our mayor, or anybody. Okay? This is all of our job. Every last one of us. And if we're not making sure that inside of our own circle, inside of our own house, that we're teaching moral values, that we're exhibiting, that we're modeling moral values and exhibiting those moral values to our younger ones who are not going to be in our sight all the time. But we can at least sow into their hearts right living and righteous living. If we're not doing that, we're just as guilty as anybody else. We punched the cop. That's what we did, because we let somebody that's younger than us think it was all right to do so. Y'all take care. Thank you all for listening. I made it under an hour, which is very unusual. And I really appreciate each and every one of you all. You all share this on out, and I'll be back on again soon. Pray for our city. I know there's those who are going to say, hey, he said the pray word. Yeah, he did. Pray for our city. Pray for North Charleston, that there'll be revelation, knowledge, and understanding on how we can actually move forward collectively as a city and make this the great city that it's supposed to be without showing up on World News Tonight again. Y'all take care. This is the pastor. I'm out, and I'm in the dark. Peace.